There's a very interesting discussion going on in the OpenAI chat room where Keith asked a really good question. What is a platform here anyway? And Ilya Polosukin and Amjad Masad take a stab at it. But it got me thinking, what really is a platform? So I'm going to stitch in Keith's question. It's a little long-winded, but it should just give you a sense and let you jump that thread if you want to. But I just want to address the higher level question of what is a platform?
Thank you for being had. That was my dad's joke. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being had. So I remember wondering this question before when listening to your podcast, but can you actually think through, or I guess I have a hard time picturing exactly what a platform is for a large language model. Obviously I know what a platform is, right? So, but there's just how do you think of it best? Do you think of it as the platform, is the data there? Is the compute there? Are the models there? Is it purely API calls? It feels like it's such a new field and there's so many different areas to it, and it's not clear where things are going to get sort of tractable on the individual level or the enterprise level versus the cloud massive model levels. The massive model levels. So yeah, I guess I've been thinking a lot about obviously we want to know where the picks and shovels are going to go or be needed, right? But I guess it's not entirely intuitive to me what the platform play would look like here. I mean, I know there will be one. Anyway, so and obviously you're doing what you're doing is amazing, right? And that's collecting a good selling point for people to kind of gather together and build new stuff. So maybe you're the platform. Let's make you the platform. Anyway, so that's my thoughts, and I'm sorry, I'm literally just waking up. So, but good morning. I'm super excited to have you here, man.
So what is a platform? And now we're talking mostly about software platforms, although some of them are a combination of software and hardware. So I think I will try to go through some examples to try and elucidate what I think a platform is. The literal definition of a platform is that it is a stable surface on which you stand so that you can build something and reach higher. For companies, they're always trying to reach their customers. So to a company, a platform is a stable space on which you can stand and build. And because you're on the platform, you can reach more customers. So a good platform is broad. So it's broadly applicable. A good platform is stable. So it doesn't change when you try to build things on it. It doesn't get yanked out from underneath you. It's not wobbly. And a good platform allows you to reach further towards your customers than you would have been able to reach otherwise. Now we can take some examples of good platforms and bad platforms and what they do and what they don't do. A classic platform is a software operating system. So for example, if you use Microsoft Windows, it was a stable platform. They went to huge lengths to ensure backwards compatibility. And it was broad in that a lot of people were using it, and it extended your reach to a lot of customers and allowed you to do things that you couldn't do easily before, like have a windowing system and run on lots and lots of PCs. And now you could reach new customers. Microsoft itself did not distribute you, so they didn't help you reach more customers. But the platform itself was so solid and so stable and did so many things for free for you that you had no problem building on top of that platform. Problem would occur when they got in the way of you and your customers. So for example, Microsoft decided that something you were doing should be part of the operating system instead. And then they started breaking the APIs for you or making it harder for you to communicate with your customers. And they had access to inside APIs of their own with their own development teams. And they had better distribution. So they started competing with you and they took your customers away. That's when they were being a bad platform. Those cases were common enough that they got hauled in front of antitrust, but they weren't so common that it put them out of business. Apple takes it one level further. They're an even broader platform. They have a hardware-software combination. By building on top of them, you get a stable surface to build on. You get tons of code for free. You get to run on lots of iPhones, and you have distribution across hardware and software. There's distribution elements built in through the App Store that actually help you reach more users. But they take a much steeper cut, 30% of everything you try to do, which is a big tax, and they are more likely to compete with you, whether they're building Apple Music or Apple Maps or some other Apple software that's trying to replace what somebody already does. But generally, these operating system or operating system slash hardware monopolies, duopolies are the gold standard for platforms. They also interconnect developers with each other, which is another thing. But these are the gold standard for platforms. They are very solid. They're very stable. They're very broad, and you can reach very high in terms of code. And sometimes they even give you distribution. Twitter and Facebook both tried to build platforms, but these were lousy platforms. Why is that? Well, I think it's because they didn't give you a stable surface to build upon. There wasn't that much code there that you were taking from Facebook or Twitter. These are very thin code light applications. What they were instead was offering was reach. So you could stand on a tall, thin surface and reach many more users, reach their users. But of course, Twitter and Facebook want these users to be controlled by Twitter and Facebook. So they were grudgingly let you reach users and they were grudgingly lending them to you. This is like a stack of books piled up and you climb on top of the stack of books. It's not a broad surface. It's not a stable surface. You can barely tiptoe balance on it. And the customers you're reaching really belong to Twitter and Facebook. So at any given time, they're looking to topple it or make it wobbly if you start reaching too many of their customers too fast. That's why I think Twitter and Facebook ultimately failed as platforms for developers. However, for end users, Twitter and Facebook are great platforms because an end user can't rebuild Twitter or Facebook. The software has huge value to them. The end user can't get any reach on their own. Twitter and Facebook are happy to amplify their reach. So for an end user creator, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc. are amazing platforms. For developers, they're terrible platforms. Open source is a great platform for developers because it's the ultimate, most stable surface you can imagine. I can take the code. You're never going to yank it from me. It's part of my application. That's why developers love building on open source. However, it gets them absolutely no distribution and there isn't much open source hardware deployment out there. So it's mainly limited to software and mainly limited to certain use cases. With that in mind, I think we'll get to see whether any of these AI providers are really a platform or not. A good AI platform provider will have a very stable surface for you to build upon. They'll let you customize it and make it your own. They'll ideally be open source and open data, although they probably won't be. Maybe a few will, but those will be the most popular development platforms. And they'll be stable, broad surfaces that never tell you what to do or kick you off. And then ideally, the best of the best would bring in users as well, although I have a hard time seeing them doing so.
Great explanation and taxonomy. Do I understand correctly that there's basically two types of users, one being the developer user and one being the end user?
I would add a third category in there. So there's developers who are writing code on top of your platform, building more blocks that other developers can plug into. Then they are creators slash suppliers. So these are content suppliers, commerce suppliers. So these would be sellers on eBay's, driver on Uber's, and creators on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and so on. And then there's audience. So there's quite a few categories here.
I'd also be curious how you think marketplaces fall into that explanation. Are they a different type of platform or do they differentiate themselves through other means other than that there's transactions taking place or a certain kind of transaction taking place?
Marketplaces can be also considered a platform, but they're a narrow kind of platform in that they don't really allow developer activity on there for the most part, but they do allow a supplier kind of activity. So eBay sellers, Uber drivers, Shopify shops, etc. And so they are platforms, but they're not broadly extensible platforms. So now you've got me thinking perhaps it would be better to divide platforms into extensible platforms, non-extensible platforms. And so an extensible platform is one where you can write code, make the platform better, and then other people can use that code to build on top of you. And this is, of course, the classic operating system platform, and maybe even an AI platform or an AWS platform. And a non-extensible platform, you're just restricted to using it in the way that the platform is designed. Like an Uber driver is very commoditized, and even an eBay seller has to fit into a very narrow definition of creator.
Just for completeness, I'll add two other, I think, very important platforms out there. So the first one is the web browser. And the web browser, I think, does a lot of that first category. It's extensible. You can write, whatever website you want to serve up within the browser. You can do anything you want there. And you can also create extensions that kind of live on the client side of the browser. And it's very difficult for the creators of Chrome or Safari or Netscape or whatever to even compete with the developers on the web browser. It's possible to kind of bias it a little bit towards them, but it's difficult with web browsers. with web browsers. And the second very important platform is Amazon e-commerce. And so this is a platform because they basically take that whole problem of logistics and customer delivery and all of that, and they open it up to Amazon suppliers. So it's a supplier to buyer platform. It's not really a developer platform, but it's a very important platform in the space of atoms. And now Amazon does actually then go look at the data of their top performing sellers and then create their own products and compete with them. But, broadly, they're, I would say, a super important platform for the general physical world. But the common theme that I'm noticing here is not that there's one particular part of it that makes it a platform. It's actually the full integration that makes it something a platform. In all of these cases, it's a combination of multiple parts that come together, make it a platform. So in the question of AI, the question was posed around, which particular part of the AI business will make it a platform. And I think the answer is that it has to be integrated, many of them integrated in a particular way.